Jake Miller wiped sweat from his forehead as he pushed through the thick green leaves. His uniform was torn in 3 places, and mud covered his boots. The jungle of Kepler 442c was nothing like the training videos back at the academy. Everything here wanted to hurt him, or eat him, or both. 3 days ago, he had been dropped off with his partner Ryan Cox for a survival exercise. They were supposed to work together and find their way to the pickup point in 7 days. But the storm on the first night changed everything. Lightning split the sky and rain fell like bullets. When morning came, Ryan was gone. Jake had searched for hours calling his name, but found nothing except broken branches and mud. Now Jake was alone. His leg hurt bad from where he fell yesterday, trying to cross a stream. The cut was deep and still bleeding even though he had tried to clean it. Every step sent pain up his leg, but he kept moving. Stopping meant dying, and Jake was not ready to die. The academy had taught him many things about survival. Find water first, then shelter, then food. But they never taught him how scary it was to be alone on an alien world. Every sound made him jump. Every shadow could hide something that wanted to kill him. But Jake pushed the fear down and focused on what he needed to do. Water was not a problem here. It rained every few hours and streams ran everywhere. Food was harder, but he had found some purple berries that his scanner said were safe to eat. They tasted terrible, but they kept him alive. Shelter was the biggest problem. The trees were too thick to climb, and the ground was always wet. Jake stopped and looked at his wounded leg. Blood had soaked through the bandage he made from his torn shirt. He needed to stop and clean it again, or it would get infected. He found a large rock beside a stream and sat down carefully. The water was cold and clear. Jake rolled up his pant leg and looked at the cut. It was worse than he thought. The gash ran from his knee almost to his ankle. It was not deep enough to hit bone, but it was deep enough to keep bleeding. Jake took off the old bandage and threw it away. He tore another piece from his shirt and soaked it in the stream water. The cold water made him gasp when he cleaned the wound, but he kept going. While Jake worked on his leg, something watched him from the trees. Zexthara had been following the scent of blood for 2 hours. The smell was strange and new, not like any prey animal on this world. The creature moved silently through the branches, staying downwind, so its own scent would not give it away. Zexthara was 8 feet tall, with dark green scales that helped it blend with the jungle. Its claws were sharp enough to cut through metal, and its teeth could crush bone. Nothing on this planet challenged Zexthara. It was the apex predator, and every animal here knew to fear it. But this bleeding creature by the stream was different. It walked on 2 legs like some of the traders who came to the spaceport. But those traders always traveled in groups with weapons and ships. This one was alone and hurt. Easy prey. Zexthara watched the strange creature clean its wound. Most animals would be panicking by now. Most would be running or hiding or crying out for help. But this one just sat calmly working on its injury like it had all the time in the world. That was odd, but not worrying. Sometimes prey animals went into shock when they were hurt badly. Jake finished cleaning his cut and wrapped the new bandage around his leg. It was not perfect, but it would have to do. He stood up slowly, testing his weight on the injured leg. It hurt, but he could walk. The sun was getting low, which meant he needed to find shelter soon. Nighttime brought out the real predators. He looked around the area, trying to decide which way to go. The stream ran north toward the mountains. Following water was usually a good idea. Mountains might have caves where he could hide. Jake picked up his small pack and started walking north along the stream. Zexthara followed, staying about 50 meters behind. The creature was definitely prey, but it moved well for something that was injured. Most wounded animals limped badly or fell down often. This one seemed to push through the pain like it was nothing. That was interesting, but still not threatening. As Jake walked, he kept looking around. His training had taught him to always watch for danger. The jungle was full of sounds, but most were normal. Birds calling, insects buzzing, water running over rocks. But sometimes he heard something else. A branch breaking when there was no wind. Leaves rustling when no animal was visible. Someone or something was following him. Jake did not let his face show his worry. If a predator was watching him, panic would make it attack. He kept walking at the same steady pace, but his hand moved closer to the knife on his belt. It was not much of a weapon, but it was all he had. The sun disappeared behind the trees, and the jungle started getting dark. Jake needed shelter now. He found a spot where 3 large rocks formed a small cave. It was not perfect, but it would protect his back and sides. Jake gathered some dry branches and built a small fire near the entrance. Fire would keep most animals away. Sexthara watched from the darkness as the creature made its camp. The fire was clever. Most prey animals were afraid of fire, but this one used it as a tool. The predator settled down to wait. It would attack when the creature fell asleep. Then this hunt would be over. Sexthara crouched in the shadows, watching the fire flicker near the rocks. The wounded creature sat with its back against stone, feeding small branches into the flames. This was taking longer than expected. Most prey would be asleep by now, but this one stayed awake and alert. The predator had time to think while it waited. Something about this creature bothered it. The smell was familiar, but not from this world. Where had it encountered this scent before? Then Sexthara remembered the spaceport and the traders who came to buy rare metals from the mines. 2 seasons ago, an old trader named Korth had landed his beaten ship at the port. Korth was a vegan with gray skin and too many arms. He traded in stories as much as goods and always had tailies from distant worlds. Sexthara sometimes listened from the shadows when the traders gathered to drink and talk. That night Korth had been drinking the strong liquor that made his kind talk too much. Other traders sat around him listening to his stories. Most were about profits and deals and boring trade routes. But then someone asked about the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Korth had laughed, but it was not a happy sound. He said there was no question about that. Humans were the apex predators of known space. The other traders had made jokes about the small pink creatures who looked so weak. But Korth got serious and told them they were fools to think that way. He said humans were pack hunters who never left their wounded behind. He said they felt pain like any other species, but pain made them angry instead of weak. He said they had something called battle rage that turned them into killing machines when they were hurt or threatened. The other traders did not believe him at first. Humans looked soft and fragile compared to most species. They had no claws or fangs or thick hide to protect them. But Korth insisted he had seen things that would give them nightmares. He told about a human cargo ship that was attacked by pirates near Rigel. The pirates thought it would be easy prey. 12 armed raiders against 6 human crew members. But the humans did not surrender like most species would. They fought back with anything they could find. When the battle was over, all 12 pirates were dead. 5 of the humans were badly wounded, but still fighting. The 6th human had lost an arm, but was using it as a club to beat the last pirate to death. Korth said he arrived just after the fight ended, and the smell of blood and rage still filled. The Air. Another story was about a human military unit on some backwater world. 50 alien soldiers had surrounded 5 humans in a bunker. The aliens had better weapons and more numbers. They demanded surrender, but the humans refused. The siege lasted 3 days. When it ended, only 1 human was still alive. But all 50 aliens were dead. The last human was found sitting in a pile of bodies with 17 different wounds. He was still holding his weapon and still trying to reload it when the rescue ships arrived. Korth said the human lived and went back to fighting a month later. The traders around the fire had gone quiet listening to these stories. Finally, someone asked if Korth was making it all up. The old vegan had pulled up his shirt and shown them. 3 long scars across his chest. He said those were from a human female who caught him trying to steal from her shipyard. She was half his size and had no weapons. But when she realized what he was doing, she attacked him with her bare hands. Korth said it was like fighting a wild animal. She moved too fast and hit too hard and would not stop even when he begged for mercy. He barely escaped with his life dot. After that night, the other traders treated humans differently. They were still polite when doing business, but there was fear in their eyes. They spoke in whispers about human ships and always paid their debts quickly. Word spread through the trade networks that humans were not to be crossed. Zexthara had dismissed most of these stories as trader exaggeration. Every species had legends about their own toughness. But now, looking at this wounded creature by the fire, the predator began to wonder. This thing smelled like the humans from Korth's stories. The creature had been alone and hurt for days, but showed no signs of giving up. It moved with purpose and intelligence. It made tools and used fire, and watched for threats. Most importantly, it did not smell afraid. Every prey animal Zexthara had ever hunted gave off the sharp smell of fear when it knew death was near. But this creature smelled calm and focused. It was treating this situation like a problem to solve rather than a death sentence. That was not normal prey behavior. That was predator behavior. Jake added another branch to his fire and checked his bandage again. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but his leg was stiff and sore. He needed rest, but something in the jungle was watching him. He could feel eyes on him, even though he could not see anything in the darkness. His training said to trust his instincts. If he felt like he was being hunted, then he probably was. Jake kept his knife close and made sure the fire stayed bright. Whatever was out there seemed to be waiting for something. Maybe it was afraid of the fire, or maybe it was just being patient. Jake had studied the predators of this world before the mission. Most were ambush hunters who preferred easy targets. A wounded animal would normally be perfect prey. But Jake was not acting like normal prey. He was making it clear that any attack would cost the predator dearly. In the darkness, Zexthara watched and remembered more trader stories. Stories of human colonies that fought off entire invasion fleets. Stories of human soldiers who kept fighting after injuries that would kill other species. Stories of humans who tracked their enemies across star systems for revenge. The predator began to understand that this might not be the easy hunt it had expected. Dawn came slowly through the thick jungle canopy. Jake had dozed for maybe 2 hours during the night, but never fell into deep sleep. Training had taught him to sleep light in dangerous situations. Every sound brought him instantly awake with his hand on his knife. The fire had burned down to glowing coals. Jake fed it more wood and boiled some stream water in his metal cup. The hot water would help clean his wound again, and he could drink the rest. His food supplies were getting low, but he could survive on berries and roots for a few more days. Zexthara had not moved from its hiding spot all night. The creature had stayed awake and alert for hours before finally resting. Even then it slept like a predator, with one eye open and ready to fight. This was definitely not normal prey behavior. The predator was starting to have serious doubts about this hunt. Every instinct said this should be an easy kill. The creature was alone, wounded, and far from help. But something felt wrong. The trader stories kept echoing in Zexthara's mind. Jake stood up and tested his injured leg. It was stiff, but stronger than yesterday. The bleeding had stopped completely, and the pain was manageable. He packed his few belongings and kicked dirt over the fire. Time to keep moving toward the pickup point. As Jake prepared to leave, he felt those watching eyes again. Whatever had followed him yesterday was still there. He made a show of checking his equipment while actually scanning the jungle for movement. Nothing visible, but the feeling of being hunted was stronger than ever. Jake started walking, but changed his pattern from yesterday. Instead of following the stream, he cut east through thicker jungle. If something was tracking him, he wanted to see how it reacted to unexpected moves. Behind him, branches rustled softly as his stalker adjusted course to follow. Zexthara was impressed. Despite itself, the creature was thinking tactically and trying to learn about its pursuer. Most prey animals just ran in straight lines until they collapsed from exhaustion. This one was studying the situation and adapting its behavior. The predator remembered another story Korth had told about human tactical thinking. A human trading post had been surrounded by hostile aliens who demanded surrender. The humans were outnumbered 10-1 and had no heavy weapons. Any sane species would have given up. Instead, the humans had studied their enemies for 3 days, learning their patrol patterns and shift changes. Then they launched a night attack that caught the aliens completely off guard. By morning, the siege was broken and half the alien force was dead. The humans had turned a hopeless situation into victory through planning and patience. Jake was showing similar behavior now. He was not panicking or running blindly. He was gathering information about his pursuer and looking for advantages. That was distinctly human according to the stories. The jungle grew thicker as Jake moved east. Vines hung like ropes between massive trees, and the ground was soft with rotting leaves. The air smelled of decay and growing things. Strange birds called from the canopy, and insects buzzed. Around his head, Jake found what he was looking for after an hour of careful movement. A small clearing with good sight lines and multiple escape routes. If his stalker wanted a confrontation, this would be a good place for it. Jake sat on a fallen log and pretended to rest while actually preparing for trouble. He loosened his knife. In its sheath, and identified 3 sturdy branches that could serve as clubs. A pile of fist-sized rocks lay near his feet. Not much against a large predator, but better than nothing. Jake had learned that humans survived through preparation and refusing to give up. ZEX, single quotes THAR, they circled the clearing, staying hidden in the thick undergrowth. The creature had chosen this spot deliberately. It knew it was being hunted and was setting up an ambush. That showed tactical awareness and confidence. Most prey would keep running until they dropped. The predator tested the air currents carefully. It needed to approach from downwind to avoid detection. But as Zexthara moved closer, something unexpected happened. Instead of smelling fear, the creature was giving off the sharp metallic scent of readiness to fight. Every prey animal smelled afraid when cornered. That was basic biology. Fear made them easier to catch because it clouded their judgment and slowed their reactions. But this creature smelled like it was looking forward to the confrontation. Like it wanted a fight. Zexthara paused, confused by this development. In all its years of hunting, nothing had ever smelled eager for battle when facing certain death. What kind of species actually got excited about fighting a larger, stronger opponent? Only other apex predators showed that kind of response. Sat quietly watching the jungle around him. His pursuer was close now. Something large was moving through the undergrowth, about 30 meters to his north. It was trying to circle around behind him, but Jake had expected that. He shifted position. Slightly to keep the threat in front of him. Academy instructors had drilled combat principles into every cadet. Never let an enemy get behind you. Always have an escape route. Make yourself too expensive to kill easily. Use whatever weapons you can find. Fight dirty if you have to survive. But most importantly, they taught that humans were pack hunters. Even alone, a human was dangerous because other humans would come looking. Any predator that killed a human had to worry about facing an entire pack seeking revenge. That was why most species avoided conflict with humans when possible. Jake wondered if his stalker understood this principle. Somewhere above this planet, rescue ships were probably already searching for him and Ryan. If Jake did not make the pickup, point on time, more humans would come. Lots of them with better weapons and very bad attitudes. Zexthara finally got close enough to see the creature clearly. It was smaller than expected, with pale pink skin and short brown fur on its head. No claws or fangs visible, but it held a metal blade and had positioned itself strategically in the clearing. The predator studied its intended prey and felt a chill of recognition. This matched the descriptions from Korth's stories perfectly. Bipedal pink skin, small but tough-looking, and showing no fear despite being obviously outmatched. This was definitely a human. All the traitor warnings came flooding back. Humans were pack hunters who never abandoned their wounded. If this one did not return home, others would come looking. Armed, angry humans with advanced weapons and military training. The kind of humans who had wiped out entire pirate fleets and alien armies. Zexthara began to reconsider this hunt. Killing one wounded human might bring a pack of healthy ones to this world. That could be very bad for every predator on the planet. Maybe this was not worth the risk after all. Jake heard the bushes part behind him and knew his stalker had finally decided to show itself. He did not turn around immediately. Sudden movements might trigger attack. Instead, he slowly reached for his knife and shifted his weight to his good leg. When Jake finally looked over his shoulder, his blood went cold. 8 feet of scaled muscle and razor-sharp claws stood at the edge of the clearing. Yellow eyes stared at him with predatory intelligence. This was definitely the apex predator of this world, and Jake was definitely its target. Most people would have screamed or run or frozen in terror. Jake felt the fear spike through his system, but his training took over. He stood slowly, keeping his movements smooth and non-threatening. Running would just trigger chase instincts. Better to face this thing and hope it could be reasoned with or scared off. Zexthara watched the human's reaction carefully. No screaming, no panic, no desperate flight. Just calm movement and steady eye contact. The creature was studying its enemy the same way Zexthara was studying it. That was predator behavior, not prey behavior. Jake turned to face the massive reptile fully. It was even bigger up close, with muscles that could tear him apart without effort. But Jake had learned that predators respected confidence. He stood, straight, gripped his knife firmly, and met those yellow eyes without flinching. The two apex predators stared at each other across 10 meters of jungle clearing. Neither moved for long seconds. Jake was calculating his chances, while Zexthara was remembering traitor stories. Both were trying to decide if this fight was worth the risk. Jake spoke first, keeping his voice calm and steady. He did not know if the creature could understand human language, but tone was universal. He was not begging or threatening, just communicating. That he did not want conflict, but was prepared for it. Zexthara heard the sounds the human made. They meant nothing, but the tone was clear. This was not submission or fear. This was one apex predator acknowledging another, while making it clear that any attack would be costly. The creature was offering a way to avoid bloodshed, but what really struck Zexthara was what it saw in the human's eyes. Not the desperate look of cornered prey, but the cold calculation of a fellow hunter. This small, wounded creature was genuinely preparing to fight something 3 times its size. That was either insanity or the confidence of a true apex predator. Jake slowly raised his free hand palm outward in what he hoped was a universal peace gesture. With his other hand, he kept the knife ready, but pointed downward rather than at the reptile. He was trying to communicate that he did not want to fight, but would defend himself if necessary. The standoff continued for another minute. Jake's injured leg was starting to ache from supporting his weight, but he did not shift position. Any sign of weakness might trigger an attack. He had to project strength, even though his heart was racing and sweat was running down his back. Zexthara was facing a dilemma. Every hunting instinct said to attack now while the prey was injured and alone. But every survival instinct was screaming warnings about what would happen next. If this really was a human, then killing it would bring terrible consequences. Predator remembered Korth's final story from that night at the spaceport. A human colony ship had been attacked by raiders who killed most of the civilians, including children. 3 humans survived and escaped to tell the story. Within a year, human military forces had tracked down every single raider involved. They had followed the pirates across 12 star systems. They had fought through 3 different alien governments that tried to protect the raiders. They had spent enormous resources and lost many ships in the pursuit. But they never gave up until every last pirate was dead. Korth said the humans made it clear that attacking their civilians would always result in total retaliation. They turned that raid into a teaching moment for the entire galaxy. No one had attacked a human colony since then, because everyone knew the price would be too high. Standing in this jungle, clearing Zexthara realized it was facing the same choice those pirates had faced. Kill this human and eventually face the wrath of the entire pack. Or let it go and avoid bringing human military forces to this world. Jake saw something change in the reptile's posture. The aggressive stance softened slightly, and those yellow eyes seemed to be calculating rather than preparing to strike. Maybe this creature was smarter than he had hoped. Maybe it was realizing that killing him would cause more problems than it solved. The human took a careful step backward toward one of his planned escape routes. Not fleeing, but creating more space between them. The reptile watched, but did not advance. That was encouraging. If it was going to attack, it would already have moved. Zexthara made its decision. The risk was too high, and the potential consequences too severe. This hunt was not worth bringing human revenge down on the entire planet. Better to let this one go and warn other predators to avoid these creatures entirely. But simply walking away would look like retreat and might encourage the human to become aggressive. Zexthara needed a way to end this confrontation without losing face. The predator remembered how some prey animals played dead to avoid conflict. In one fluid movement, Zexthara collapsed to the ground and lay perfectly still. Its breathing became shallow, and its eyes closed to narrow slits. To any observer, it would appear that the apex predator had suddenly died of unknown causes. Jake stared in shock as the massive reptile suddenly dropped and went motionless. What had just happened? Had it had some kind of heart attack or seizure? Was this some kind of trick? He kept his knife ready and did not approach the apparently dead creature. Minutes passed, and the reptile did not move. Jake could barely see it breathing. Whatever had happened, it seemed to be genuinely unconscious or dead. This was his chance to escape while the threat was neutralized. Jake backed away slowly, keeping his eyes on the motionless predator. He reached the edge of the clearing. He turned and moved quickly into the jungle. He needed to put distance between himself and that creature in case it was faking. Zex THAR awaited until the human scent faded completely before opening its eyes. The deception had worked. The human was gone, and the confrontation was over without bloodshed. Now all predators on this world would know to avoid humans at all costs. The apex predator rose and melted back into the jungle. It had learned an important lesson about the true hierarchy of the galaxy. Jake moved through the jungle for 3 hours before he felt safe enough to stop. His leg was throbbing, and he needed rest, but the memory of those yellow eyes kept him moving. Whatever had happened back there, he did not want to be around when that creature woke up. He found a defensible position among some large rocks and finally allowed himself to sit down. His hands were shaking from leftover adrenaline, and his heart was still racing. That had been the closest to death he had ever come, and somehow he was still alive. Jake tried to make sense of what he had witnessed. The reptile had been preparing to attack, then suddenly collapsed. Maybe it had been sick or injured. Maybe something else had scared it off. He would probably never know for sure, but he was grateful to still be breathing. 2 days later, Jake heard the sound that meant salvation. The deep throb of military engines echoed through the jungle as search craft swept the area. He activated his emergency beacon and waited for pickup. Within an hour, a rescue shuttle landed in a nearby clearing. Sergeant Pete Collins led the rescue team. He was a tough-looking man with gray hair and scars from old battles. Behind him came Medic Danny Ross, carrying a full medical kit, and 3 other soldiers with heavy weapons. They looked like they were ready for war. Collins checked Jake over, with experienced eyes looking for serious injuries. The leg wound was healing well, and Jake was alert and coherent. Not bad for someone who had been alone in hostile jungle for 6 days. Most cadets would not have lasted half that long. Danny Ross cleaned and bandaged Jake's leg properly while Collins asked questions about what had happened. Jake told them about losing Ryan in the storm and surviving alone in the jungle. He mentioned being stalked by something large, but did not give details about the confrontation. The medic pronounced Jake fit for transport, and the team prepared to leave. As they walked toward the shuttle, Jake noticed how alert the soldiers were. They moved like they expected trouble, and their weapons were ready for immediate use. These were not academy instructors, but real combat veterans. Collins explained that they had been searching for 3 days since Jake and Ryan missed their first check-in. Ryan had been found yesterday safe, but worried about his missing partner. The academy took cadets' safety seriously and spared no expense on rescue operations. Jake was impressed by the response. Within hours of being reported missing, the military had deployed search teams with advanced sensors and heavy firepower. Any predator that attacked a human cadet would quickly face overwhelming retaliation from trained soldiers. As the shuttle lifted off, Jake looked down at the jungle that had nearly killed him. Somewhere down there, a massive reptile was probably wondering what kind of species it had encountered. Jake hoped it would spread the word to other predators to avoid humans entirely. Meanwhile, Zexthara watched the human aircraft disappear into the sky. The rescue had come exactly as the traitor stories predicted. Multiple humans with advanced weapons and military discipline. They had moved through the jungle like a pack of apex predators, reclaiming their wounded member. The predator had made the right choice by avoiding that fight. Killing one injured human would have brought this entire pack down on the planet. They would have hunted every large predator until they found the one responsible. The costs would have been terrible for all native species. Zexthara began spreading word through the complex communication networks that connected all predators on the world. The message was simple and urgent. Humans were not prey under any circumstances. They were the apex predators of known space, and attacking them brought swift, terrible revenge. Other predators listened and passed the warning along. Within days, every dangerous creature on the planet knew to avoid the strange pink bipeds. When future human cadets came for training exercises, they would find the jungle strangely peaceful. 3 months later, Jake graduated from the academy with honors. His survival skills had impressed the instructors, and he was assigned to an elite reconnaissance unit. He never told anyone about his confrontation with the reptile. Some experiences were too strange to put in official reports, but Jake never forgot the lesson he learned in that jungle clearing. Sometimes the deadliest weapon was not claws or fangs, but reputation. The stories other species told about humans were often more effective than actual violence. Fear could be just as powerful as force when used correctly. Years passed, and Jake became a respected officer who served on many dangerous worlds. He always treated alien species with caution and respect. He knew that humans had earned their fearsome reputation through centuries of refusing to surrender or abandon their own. That reputation was both a blessing and a responsibility. It kept many conflicts from starting because potential enemies knew the price of attacking humans. But it also meant that humans had to live up to their legendary toughness when the stories were put to the test. Jake carried that knowledge with him throughout his career. In quiet moments, he sometimes wondered about the intelligent predator that had chosen wisdom over instinct in a jungle clearing. That creature had understood something important about survival in a galaxy where humans were no longer prey. Zexthara lived for many more years as the undisputed apex predator of its world. But it never forgot the day it met something higher on the food chain. The traitor stories had been true after all. Humans were pack hunters who never abandoned their wounded and always sought revenge on those who harmed their own. The predator had chosen survival over pride and learned that sometimes the smartest thing an apex predator could do was recognize when it was no longer at the top. In a galaxy full of humans, it was better to be a living predator than a dead legend. The jungle of Kepler 442c became known as one of the safest training grounds in human space. Cadets still faced the challenges of survival in hostile terrain, but they were never threatened by large predators. The local wildlife had learned an important lesson about the true apex predators of the galaxy. And in cantinas and trading posts across known space, old traders still told stories about human toughness and pack loyalty. New species listened and learned that some prey was too dangerous to hunt. The legend of human ferocity continued to grow with each telling. Sometimes the best victory was the fight that never happened at all.